Hi everyone, it's Janine with 49 in Market. We are very excited to show you our brand new Ultimate Page Kits. Each of our core collections starting this year will have an Ultimate Page Kit to coordinate with it. Each kit includes all the pieces that you can replicate for beautifully layered layouts. In this kit, you'll see the photos are on the front. It also comes in a nice little packaged plastic wrap with all your pieces. So just to give you a quick overview, and then we're going to walk you through how to put it together super easy. So our cover sheet shows each of the finished layouts if you choose to replicate it the way that we have offered the images. Or obviously you can take the pieces and do your own thing. You'll also get a fussy cut sheet on the back. Sometimes we'll be using these elements in the pages, sometimes they'll just be extras. So you will always find a few extra bits and pieces along the way. With your page kit, you're gonna get 4 different pages, or papers I should say. These double-sided papers are printed so that the finished layout is shown on one side, and the other side is a nice blank base, which is just super layered, so this way you can get that effect of the finished layout. So here we have 1 layout, 2, upside down, 3, and where is my 4th sheet? My 4th sheet is right here. Nope, I showed you that one. We'll get there. This is the 4th sheet. So what you can do is you can take one of 2 different approaches when you're putting together these layouts. You can either build your composite with the pieces from the finished layout, or you can use that blank side. And I kind of do a combination of both, which I'll walk you through shortly. Best way to get started, in addition to the papers, you'll also have different pieces. Most page kits are going to have about 4 laser cut sheets. This is the Tranquility page kit. There are 4 different sheets of laser cut elements, as well as 2 different chipboard pieces. These are thin chipboard matte finish with an adhesive backing on it. As I said, you'll get plenty of extra pieces to go and make additional projects. But for now, my suggestion is that in order to get started, the easiest thing to do is to prepare your laser cut images. And when you're removing these from the paper backing, it's easiest to flip it over. As you'll see, there are little tabs that keep the pieces on the backing. This is packaging purposes, and some of them are very intricate. You can carefully remove them with your hand. Most of the little tabs are very thin. On some of your more intricate pieces, like the foliage, I definitely recommend using a craft knife to kind of just pinch and remove, because you don't want to rip off your leaves. If you do, you can always glue them back accordingly. But this is just a little look at how it's easiest to remove those pieces from the backing, and just to show you some of the detail and intricacy of those laser cuts. Okay, so I'm going to kind of fast forward. I'm going to remove all of my pieces, and what I like to do to kind of keep it a little bit organized, you won't necessarily see all the layers that are involved in here on first look, but I kind of just try to get a sense of when I'm removing them. I kind of just make a pile of what's going to go onto each particular layout, so I have a bit of a sense of what's what and can keep it a little bit organized. Inevitably, I'll have another pile with all the extras. As well, some of the pieces you may or may not use the chipboard. So for now, I'm going to leave the chipboard in, and later I'll show you where we are with the different pieces once we remove them from their backing. Okay, we're back. Now that you have your laser cut pieces removed from their backing, and some sense of a little bit of organization in terms of which pieces will go with what layouts, you will find extra pieces later, and that's fine, but just having some grouping helps a little bit because there are a lot of pieces. Also, before I get started, I will mention each of the page kits and cluster kits also come with additional extra little pieces, They'll vary from kit to kit. In this particular set, we have 4 ribbon bows as well as 4 little metal clips that we will put to use. So I'm going to begin with this layout. There's a lot of ways that you can go about tackling these page kits, but I find it's kind of best to work with both sides, so to speak, of the paper. Here you'll see this is the paper that we will build our layout up from. You'll notice the border as a nice sense of location in terms of our pieces that we will wind up building. I do like to use the finished side as kind of a guide for placement sometimes, and by that I'm kind of using it as a gauge to where some of those pieces will go and how far they'll start sticking out. So for this layout, you'll see like these two pieces are behind that chipboard frame. Now for the chipboard frame, easiest thing to do is well, you can pop these pieces out if they'll work that way. There is a backing on the chipboard, so I'm just gonna kind of pop all these pieces out. If it goes as easy, of course it doesn't go as easy as I'd like, right? I am obviously saving all those pieces off to the side because we will use them. So right now I mostly have my backing on this, but just to get a sense of what's going to be going on. Okay, so as you'll see in the finished layout, we have pre-printed and cut out pieces. If you want to follow the sample exactly as shown, feel free to do so. That's what I'll be doing here in the video. But another thing to point out is if you don't want to use these paper backings, you can certainly use 9 photos instead to fill your entire frame. So if you're looking to get a lot of photos into a page, this is certainly the one to do so. I'm using white backings in replication of my photos. These are sized to 2 1/4 by 2 1/4 inches. And I also backed the die cut wooden frame. So to get started, I'm gonna kind of just lay out my pieces. Okay. And this way I have a sense of what is going where. So I'm gonna peel off that backing just to make it a little bit easier. And then I will position like so. Obviously, you're trying not to block the other squares, but I'm going to position these so that they are covered. You can always add a little bit more adhesive to the chipboard, but at least it gives you a nice starting point in terms of keeping everything in place as it should be. So I'll flip these over. As you'll note, I kind of just use some spare scrap paper for my white. So forgive me that I have my 49 Market background paper. And if you need to, again, you can always just add a little bit more adhesive if for some reason you're blocking your squares or whatnot. Obviously, if you had real photos here, so I must cut a little bit small. If you had photos, you can obviously do it face up so that you can position your photos accordingly and make sure that you're not missing anything. So for this one, I didn't even bother. I'm not going to bother with a photo in the middle. I'm just going to pop it on top. So gently, and hopefully my glue is going to come out. I'm just going to go over that chipboard and pop that in. Okay. And I guess before I do that, see, this is why we like to look at the photo. I'm actually gonna now sneak in, before I do that, I'm gonna sneak in this laser cut stem. Now, also a point or a tip, I should say, you'll note that this particular piece, you're not gonna see this bottom leaf and probably not even this. So you can always trim off little pieces and stick them off to the side so that you can use later when you know that those pieces are going to be hidden and not viewed. So I'm going to kind of position that like so, eyeballing it, of course. And then I'll put my little butterfly. So I'm going to kind of position it like so. Okay, and then I like to use some wet glue for some of these pieces because it does give me the ability to kind of move them a little bit if I need. So I'm a little off, but that's perfectly fine. Obviously the idea is there. So this is the starting point for this particular layout. Another thing to point out is that, you know, I like to keep my layouts pretty even so that they're going to stay in my albums. As you'll note, this was a little hollow here. So what you can do is I just removed one of the backings to one of those squares, And this is just so that it gives it a little bit, of course that one doesn't fit, but that's okay. We will just trim it. And again, this is just to give it a little extra evenness to the layout. And you just cut these accordingly to whatever you need to fit. There's no right or wrong. It's obviously going to be hidden. So this way, that's nice and even. Okay, so my next step is that I'm going to, again, put these pieces back in place. I'm upside down. Okay, and then you'll note, and this is, every time you look at these, it's almost, this is my version of a puzzle. I don't like normal puzzles, but to me, this is the perfect puzzle. This piece has nothing between the piece and the chipboard, so I'm gonna lay it here. This piece, however, we're gonna put this one down, but then you'll see there's the laser cut that goes between the paper and the chipboard frame. So I'm going to kind of position it like so. Put a little glue on this side because I don't have anything on the bottom because I'm not adhering it to my page. But I'm gonna put it just like that. And then, last but not least, I will kind of just put a little glue here and here because I don't want to put it on this paper because I'm going to flip it over to the other side. But this way I can see where it is lined up. And again, you don't have to be perfect, but this is a video, so I'm going to try to go as close as I can so that you get a sense of how this all works. Okay. So I gently push that down. Hopefully that sticks. It's not sticking too well. Nor is my little piece here, but that's okay. I'm gonna gently now take my paper, flip it around, make sure I do put a whole lot of glue in all those places that keep popping up a little bit. And I also like to not go edge to edge just in case I wanna tuck anything later or if I've missed something. So for now, I'm using the guide of this border on the paper for my placement. So you'll see a little bit pops out on the top corner and a little on the side. So then I'm going to adhere this down carefully. You can also, and I should have mentioned this before I did so, but you can kind of roughen up the edges a little bit, either with a distress tool or even your fingernails. I'm kind of doing that now. And again, this just gives it a little bit more of dimension and making it look like it really is all layered the way that it's intended to be, instead of just sticking on to the paper. A lot of our products definitely are intended all to be layered and to be used accordingly to really give things a lot of dimension and depth. So this is our starting point. Now I'm gonna kind of just flip it and note to myself, okay, we're gonna have the strip across the bottom, the diagonal strip, as well as our little berry stem. We have the stamp, the memories label holder, and this does not come from here. So we're gonna put that off to the side for another layout. So this is a chipboard heart, as well as the floral is the chipboard. And the way that you know the difference between those two pieces, we did have a laser cut floral, which you can certainly use this, or if you like that white border around, that's part of the chipboard set. So that piece will come from here. So I'm going to note that it is kind of covering or going over both of those two pieces so that I have an idea of where I'm going to be placing it on this side. But I should also check, yes, it's going to go right over the bottom stem or the bottom of the frame. So we're going to put that down like so. And once again, if you felt that you wanted to even this off, you can always tuck in a little piece of chipboard, as well as you could also add additional glue if you felt you needed to. So the berry stem kind of comes off that bottom underneath. I'm going to slide that in, and then I'm going to do the cluster of that along with one of our chipboard hearts. This particular chipboard heart has the tags going, or the tails going that way. So I'm going to just grab that to prepare myself. Okay, so I'm going to adhere that. The berry stem, you know, how far out do you want it to come? Again, if we don't want to waste those pieces, I'm going to tear mine at about here and save this piece for later. because I know that it would really just tuck under and you won't see it anyway. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue, and we will go like so. I sometimes don't add all the glue down, and would even possibly take one of our little dots, which of course I don't know at this point, which is an extra, but that's okay. I'm gonna just go with it. I'm gonna actually take one of the chipboard circles so that I can give this little berry some dimension and lay it right on top. So it kind of pops off the page a little bit. Not sure if you can see that, but that's always a little bit of fun. Okay, so our cluster, the heart goes over. We're gonna do something kind of along these lines. So I'm gonna put my glue down. This is the laser cut memories. I believe there is a chipboard. No, there is. The chipboard one is a little bit smaller. So I'm just gonna use this one. And then my heart, I believe, has just the, all right, well, I'm gonna peel off the adhesive and just use some glue. Okay, so we are getting there. Now again, you'll note that this sticks up a little bit because I didn't use the chipboard, I used the paper one. So what I can do is, again, take just a little strip from the chipboard backing. And I just cut these. I mean, you can obviously use foam tape if you have that on hand as well. I just try to maximize what I have in front of me. So I'm going to put some glue on both sides and just put that down so it's nice and even, okay? And last but not least, we have another little bit, which is up in the top corner. You'll note the ribbon and the ticket with our metal clips. So here we have our real metal clips. You can do one of two things. There's the ribbons on this, but if you don't, I know some people have an aversion to too much dimension on their layouts. So if you're not a fan of using it, we also did have on the back of the cover sheet, there is a ribbon bow. So you can certainly fussy cut that out and use that if you prefer a flatter, less dimensional piece. I'm gonna go ahead and use the real one. I'm also gonna clip it. These metal clips I love. We made specially little, tiny little ones so that hopefully they're not too bulky for your layouts. So I'm gonna note that, I mean, the bow is a little bit different on the real one, but that's why if you want the actual one, you can certainly use the cutout. So I'm gonna put it over here, and it's a little tricky sometimes with the dimension that you'll get from the clips depending on where you're putting it. So you can, you know, I'm trying to actually stick it kind of right above that chipboard so that way it doesn't stick out too much. For this particular one, it actually does lay flat for me, the way that I positioned it. Sometimes you can also take one of the chipboard backings or a foam dot if you need so that it lies flat. But that is a look at our first layout, nice and complete. Hope you guys love yours as much as I do. Okay, and now I'm gonna move on to the next. One more look at a finished layout here. And I'll put this off to the side. Okay. Our next layout will also be one using a chipboard grid. Hopefully I have all my pieces here. As you'll note, this background paper has all of the florals coming off the paper itself, and we're going to build our cluster right in that center. So for this, and this particular piece with this little black is actually part of the paper. So our first piece that's going to go down is this large mat that came from one of the laser cuts. So again, for this layout, I'm going to flip it this way to get a sense of what pieces are where. Now, you'll see, and I'm going to just kind of push it off to the side a little bit. This was also a laser cut. These jagged edge off to the right side, that will go on top. But underneath it, we have this pink paper. Now, the pink laser cut to save space was trimmed, but it was trimmed the wrong way. So you can do one of two things very simply. You can either alter these two pieces, which came from our laser cut set, and just use the dimensions differently, or you could just cut it. You can cut it in half this way and then just stick your pieces accordingly. Or you can also, there's plenty of options here. As you'll note, there are so many extra pieces. You could put this off to the side and fussy cut this particular sheet from our cover sheet. There was one of these in there. So for me, I thought it was easy enough just to randomly cut that. So as you'll note, we need a piece for up here and a piece for the bottom. I'm just gonna slice it in half this way, which is the correct way. So this actually will tuck underneath, in the back, and in the front. So that's gonna be our first piece down. So how do we do this? Okay, I'm going to position, which before I do, just because this one was fussy cut, again, I like to just use a tool. You can use a distress tool, a nail file, your fingers, whatever it is that you like, just to roughen these edges, because I like the vintage look. The other thing that you can do instead of using a nail file or roughening edges is you can also obviously always use a distress ink to give it a little bit of that look. For me, my go-to is usually pumice stone. I find it to just kind of blend with a lot. This is a brand new ink pad, so it's a little darker here than yours might be if you have one. But just to give you an idea of just that little look of that little roughed up edge. So again, using ink or a distress tool is obviously optional, completely at your discretion in terms of the look that you like. So this piece is going to go on top. So I'm going to put a little glue here and a little glue here so that I don't ruin the paper underneath. And I'm going to position it using this corner and that corner. And again, it does not need to be perfect, but this is just eyeballing to give you a sense of the size of your different pieces. You'll see this pink does pop out here a little bit, and that's what it does on mine. Again, doesn't make a difference if yours is a little bit different. So I'm now going to take this off to the side just so I can see what I'm doing. And then that next piece will be this jagged edge. So I will distress a little bit. You're not really going to see this side at all. You do see this little bump out a little bit. And the pumice stone kind of just gives it like a little bit of a shadow effect. So I put my adhesive in the middle. You can always add more glue later. Me, I don't like to go to the edges, as I mentioned before, just in case I need to slide something in under. So I'm eyeballing this. It's about here on the position, leaving a little bit of the edge there. We then have a ticket and our faux washi little strip. So I'm going to actually put that faux washi strip because this is a little piece that's easy to get lost if you ask me. So I'm going to glue that down. And we also have our little tag. All right, so before going any further with these pieces in terms of placement, I want to prepare my chipboard frame. So again, I peeled this off and I didn't actually measure or prepare my squares for this. So this is at about 2.5, would be a little too small. I want to go a little over. It actually would be a 2.5 inch photo, but I'm going to go about 2 3/4 or a little bit less for my 4 photos. I will, of course, use my little paper backing for right now. I'm going just over 2.5 on my squares. All right, so we're replicating what would be 4 photos, and I just messed up one of my measurements, but that's okay. Okay, so in place of my 4 photos, I'm going to do that, so just making sure that I don't go over the crosshairs of the frame. Okay, so this would replicate my photos. So where am I? I'm gonna put this down here. I'm gonna just take those two loose pieces off, and you can see that the frame butts out over here. So I am going to use that as my guide. If I keep that all in place and position like so, okay? So this is now my base. As you'll know, I did forget, and that's perfectly fine. This is why I don't really glue all my pieces down. We're gonna be sliding in those lace pieces. So for now, I will roughen this up because it certainly looks like a tattered, torn piece of ephemera. You can crinkle it, bend it, do as you please. I'm going to shimmy that up here. If for some reason your glue is dry, you can either, pull it off, or you can obviously always cut your paper a little bit if you need to in order to position it. And then my lace, I'm gonna slide about here, okay? So I'm using that all together. And since I have no adhesive, I'm now gonna just kind of layer it down a little bit. And again, I use the wet glue, so this way I have that time to kind of position it exactly how I want it. Okay. And the tag, this, if it's adhered already, simply just cut this. And again, you can obviously use this piece later. You're only going to be seeing this little top part over here. So I just slide it under, overlapping a little bit, and then my blank file tab over here. Okay. So that's pretty much the background part of this particular layer, and then we will get to the embellishments over on the right hand side. So I'm going to stick this down onto my page. Again, I'm using this as a guide, this little bit up here. If you look at the finished layout, it kind of just pops out just a little bit. So I put some glue and I go like so, okay? Now again, I like my pages kind of sticking up over here. That's totally up to you, whether you want to adhere them all the way or not. Okay. We had popping out of this little corner as well. In the moment, I'm just going to take a look back and see, it kind of looks like it was sewn right onto that bottom edge, even though obviously this is our faux stitching with our laser cut. So I'm going to keep flipping back and forth. Yes. Okay. So that piece I'm going to stick on there. Okay. All right. So carefully, I'm going to flip it one last go. And I'm going to just get in a sense of what's going on over here. This again, there is a laser cut floral that you can certainly use, or these two pieces actually will be used somewhere else on your projects. We won't be using them in this particular kit. So that flower comes from our chipboard sheet. So I'm going to use the doily positioning to get a sense. Oop, gotta make sure I pop that little piece out. Okay, and I'm going to use that as my guide for where it goes. Okay, so off on the side, which it might be easier to show you on the black, just so you can see, we have our ticket. We have a laser cut piece, and we also have a chipboard. I'm going to use my chipboard piece for this one so that it'll lay a little bit flat, and you can use this elsewhere. We also have a laser cut piece of little details and a chipboard. So once again, I'm going to go with my chipboard pieces. For now, I'm going to flip my ticket up the right side, glue it onto there, put the chipboard treasured moments. Okay, again, I'm just eyeballing right now. And then you'll note we gave you options on this. The laser cut ribbon, you can go with the white for a little contrast, or if you like, you can certainly ink it up to give it a little bit of color, and that's completely an optional thing in terms of the look that you want to achieve. So for this, I'll just show you what it looks like with a little bit of dabbed pumice stone. Again, the white kind of gives it a little bit more of a contrast that you might like against the leaves. So you might want to leave yours plain or color it even a different color. So I'm going to make sure we see that treasured moments, and then I'll use the chipboard little moments over the circle. Maybe bring that back a little. Okay, so this is my little cluster that I've created. So I'm gonna flip it and then position it. I didn't note it does cover part of those two photos. So you can adjust that obviously depending on the subject of your photos in terms of where you actually want to place it. I'm going to put some chipboard behind this side of the heart, just so this way it does lay flat instead of kind of doing that dippy thing. So here you'll see, oh, we have a lot of chipboard backing going on here now. I'm gonna kind of just take those pieces. Now I want to make sure I strategically put it where I'm not going to see it and where it's going to lie flat. So I'm kind of making sure, right, so it'll be the right hand side of your heart as well as maybe this little floral up there. So I want to make sure it's behind my lace. And it's behind my ticket. And it doesn't have to be even or anything or full coverage. The idea is that we're just balancing it out a little bit. Okay, so now I will position it in place. And I want to make sure I don't cover too much of the photo, but yet. Okay. You can always go in and put a little additional layer if you felt that you needed to. So for me, I'll just make sure I add a little glue here. And I'm going to shimmy that underneath this big block over here. And that is a look at our second layout. I am in love with these page kits. I think it makes us all look like we are the most amazing scrapbookers ever. I hope that you are enjoying as well. Okay, and now we're going to be on to our third layout. This is the one with the dots in the center of the page, as well as the two photos on the corners. So for this one, we're starting to get into a lot of little pieces. So it gets a little bit trickier, but we are going to have a lot of fun doing this. So as you'll see, we'll kind of begin by putting our circle. We have leaves that we'll fill in, as well as our photo clusters. Now, one thing I want to mention is how I go about doing these frames with, obviously this is a photo placement with the white cardstock. These are very thin, and this is from the paper, so you'll want to be careful when you're putting your photos onto the laser cut frames. So for this top piece up here, it's actually two of these pieces, and they're going to kind of go like this. You're not going to see really one of the photos, so whether you choose just to put a piece of cardstock or another photo or duplicate, it does get kind of layered like that if you choose to make it as the sample shows. Now, to show you kind of what I do and that I find is a little bit of the easiest, I usually, when I put my cardstock, I don't really glue down the ends, because this way if I want to stick a photo in later, I'll be able to. But for now, I'm just kind of giving you a little look of what I do. You can either use a craft knife if you're comfortable with a craft knife. I glue down the pieces on the edges, and then on the bottom where it's more of a jagged edge, I take my scissor and I'm kind of just cutting it at an angle So this way I don't see the seam of the paper or photo coming through, since there really is no exact measurement for that. So that's how I've gotten these pieces. And again, I don't mind that this is coming up because I can always add glue later or swap out my photo. So that's just a little look at how I would put the photos on these very fine thinned frames. So to get our pieces together, we have a large ticket here. You'll see there's a lot of stuff that's popping out underneath our greenery over here. So we have a ticket, we have our paper with a little jagged edge on the bottom, as well as the stitching. We'll have our photo. We actually have popping out from underneath here another banner. The large green, it says Columbus Avenue line is sticking out on top over here. As the number 7628 pops out over here on top of that. And then we have two more tickets. This is more of the green ticket that pops out the top. And then more of like a little bit of a lighter green or blue is gonna go out the bottom. So just giving you a little look at some of those pieces so that we can then begin to layer and put them in place. And I think for this one, I'm gonna actually use some normal adhesive. And the only reason is I kind of want to almost secure these pieces and don't have them moving around, since there do tend to be a lot of them. So I'm just putting a little bit of adhesive on the top and bottom here. This is where that ticket is, the green ticket, and then we go with the tag on top. And with that in place, I'll slide this other ticket down at the bottom. Okay, so then that just gets like the piece started a little bit. Next, we'll go with this tag. I'm sorry, not tag, this little journaling mat. And again, I'm just gonna kind of put some adhesive right in the middle there. Flip that around. So again, I'm using that full layout as my base for how to measure out some of these pieces. And again, this is really just what works best for me. Obviously, you guys should do what you're comfortable with, but this just gives you a little look. And again, I'm putting the adhesive in the middle because I know I'm gonna start sticking other pieces in between, but I'm just following the outline of those pieces as I go. So now I'm gonna pull it aside a little bit so I can actually see what's going on here. So I'm gonna put that green, the Columbus line sticks out a little bit. So I'm tucking it just underneath my photo. And again, that's completely up to you. Okay, we have our Journey little die cut edge circle. These are all from the laser cuts that I am using right now. I'm gonna pop that out about there. Trying not to stick onto the layout. And we also have some other ephemera and tags up here. So we have the Enjoy Life file tab, and then the, what does it say, Exploring or Outside Exploring. So for the Outside Exploring, the word really exploring is the only one sticking through. I'm going to just kind of put that like that. And not the tab. And I forgot that I could have distressed some of the edges or inked them up a little bit. So I'll add in a little bit right now. I just like a little bit of contrast. And again, I think that just gives it a little bit of dimension, but not necessary. Okay. So the Enjoy Life, we're going to kind of cover up that word outside. We can take one of our metal clips and look like we are clipping on the photo. As you'll see, it kind of pops up a little bit. So I can take a foam dot if I'm gonna just take a little bit of a, what are these things called? The little glue dots. You could do any adhesive really, but I'm just gonna put that kind of behind here to keep that in place and as flat as I can. Okay, so now we are getting into some of the more intricate pieces. Oh, I did forget my banner down here. So, okay, so this is already in place. No big deal. I see that I'm just using quite a little bit of it. I'm gonna trim the bottom here, save this for later because you can always tuck the top in somewhere else. You can always do it now, you can do it later. I'm gonna just put it off to the side for the moment. And we are gonna see how we can kind of slide that in a little bit over here. That one is about there. Okay, so like the picture, I slide it in there. Okay, so now I'm gonna go and put this back on top over here, and I will see that there is some of the lace that's sticking out, but I'm gonna put that on later when I'm back on the other side, but just keeping in mind that those pieces will kind of get intertwined over here depending on how we want to group it together. My little piece popped off. Okay. All right, so these are going to be off to the side for when we do the flip side on the actual layout that we'll be putting together. Okay, so with this in place, I'm now going to look at this fancy large floral that came from our laser cuts, and we are going to kind of mix it into this cluster. So the large stem here really isn't going to show. I may or may not ever use that later, but I'm just going to trim it just so it'll be easier to kind of faux tuck under our cluster there. So giving this a little look at how it'll go. I will take some liquid glue if I can find it on my desk and put a little bit here and there so that way we can glue this down in place. Okay, and the only thing I'm really watching out for is making sure that this little leaf kind of tucks under there to give it more of that natural look, as well as I want to make sure that I do still see my enjoy life. So I'm looking at the layout and realizing that that goes underneath. So giving this a little bit, mine's a little bit off, I guess, from, oh, there we go. I'm making a mess. All right, let's go that way. I'll wipe up the glue and it'll be like that. So kind of giving you a little look at how that will overlay onto the paper. I'm going to also remember to put that staple in place once I know that this is down and I want to read that word journey. So, okay, with flipping this over, I'm going to put my circle down first onto the layout before I put my cluster. And I'm not going to pay too much attention, but I guess since I'm making a video, I should mention the triple part up there. So it kind of goes like that, and that's going to obviously go where the stitching lines are. Okay. Just adding a bit of glue there. And I will put it down like so. Okay. Now, okay. I'm then going to position that. It's following the curvature of the circle. Again, I can always tuck this corner down with a bit more glue if I don't like it sticking up the way that I have it right now. And then I'm going to carefully just turn this over, and I'm going to check out where I have those two ribbons. So I'm going to kind of position it. I'm probably not going to even bother using this whole thing. I'm just going to use a little piece on the end here and a little piece here. So the green goes down below and then this one on top. So what are we going to do? I'm going to stick this one about here. I like how that looks. And stick it down. Let me double check. I think that goes just over the paper bit over there. So I'm going to slide this a little bit so that it pops out. Okay. And then we go on top. I'm gonna leave this piece off for now until I start laying down these other pieces, because I really just wanna make sure that that word remember is gonna stick out, because I like how that looks. But I will put the little bit on the left side here under that journey tag. So I'm just gonna tear it with my hand, set that off to the side, and kind of stick this where it says day 2. And we'll go like that. Okay. All right, so we're off to a good start. The ribbon, this is the laser cut ribbon that came with it, which does match the image on the front. You can also, of course, use the real ribbon that came in the kit if you choose, if you want to add that dimension. So either or is fine. I'm just going to go with the laser cut one, as the shape is the exact same as what we're going with, and that will go on top here, as well as I am looking for one of the little gold bars. Now, we like to give options. So on your chipboard set, you'll see there are some little staples here. They are a chunkier bit. I like to go with more of a fine look, which you will find some of those staples in the laser cuts. So these are really tiny. Not even sure if you noticed them when you were taking them off, but I'm going to use one of those for holding the stem of that floral in place. And then I'm going to position the ribbon bow. I guess while we are here, I will pull out my little laser cut button. This is a tiny little button that'll be next on top with Happy Day and the Live in the Sunshine. So I'm going to pull those pieces here and note that they are going on top, overlapping some of that stem. Okay, so this might get a little not exact the way that I'm doing it now. You could, of course, build on top of the full layout so that you have a better idea of your placement, but I also think it's okay if things aren't just the way they're shown. It's perfectly fine. So there's my little staple. I'm going to kind of fluff up my ribbon a little bit, and I do have my dirty nails, and I'm sorry, I noticed I said, oh, people are not going to be happy I don't have well manicured hands, but that's okay. I can use my nails to distress the edges and just fluff it out a little bit. You can obviously always curl them with a scissor or a tool, just to give it like a little bit of like more natural look to this ribbon instead of it being so flat. And I almost tore that, or I did, but I'll glue that back together, so it's perfectly fine. Okay, so I'm going to take my little ribbon, and I say it doesn't matter, but then I have to go and double check. Okay, so I'm going to put that about there, and again, I want to just make sure that that Enjoy Life sticks out. I don't know. I'm going to trim. I don't know what this, it's just part of the leaf, the way that it was hanging there. I'm just taking that little bit off. Okay, and then I said we're going to do Happy Day. With the Live in the Sunshine little tag. It's off to the side here, and then we'll put the little button down here. Okay, coming together awesome. All right, and as you can see, all these layers are starting to build, giving it just a gorgeous look in my opinion. I am now looking for the heart, the Good Life, and this button, which I want to say most of these pieces are probably in my chipboard. So I am looking, yes, okay. You could use the paper laser cut heart, or there's the chipboard. I'm going to opt for the chipboard, so I'm going to put the paper off to the side, as well as the Good Life. I want to say there might have been a paper one of those, but I'm not sure. But so both this heart and the Good Life, as well as this little button, are in the chipboard. And then we will take the butterfly laser cut. So this is now becoming our top, which you can notice the placement of the paper tag that is behind. So the Good Life, which I'm gonna also on chipboard, it could sometimes be nice just to ink the edges a little bit. Trying to peel that backing off. It does have the adhesive, but sometimes a little extra never hurt. And I'm just inking up the edges. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of almost, oh, that's kind of fun. I can stick that to show that dimension a little bit, maybe. Curl up the edges of my butterfly. And what am I missing? We had the heart piece. And we had one of these little guys. So heart. Do the heart here. The little button popping out. I might actually, oh, I should have added the edges a little bit. And this wasn't down. Hope you guys are enjoying this video. I know I feel like I'm just talking to myself. So hopefully you're enjoying all of the details. You can fast forward. I will also mention that we'll have a link for downloadable printed directions. So those are a nice, easy reference for you as well. Okay, so we are building around this curve. We've kind of gotten the left side done. And now we're gonna focus on our right side. And as I mentioned, this was really just like a little look at layering those pieces. Here's our little clip. So we'll stick that up here. Now I'm gonna look for, which is one of the chipboard pieces. So I'll take that out, ink the edges up a bit. We also had the little tiny button, which is over here, and another staple. Now, of course, paper's nice and thick, so we're not ruining it by turning it upside down. This is another large cluster of different layers. So we have the die cut tag, which has the built-in string. We're going to use the chipboard heart that has mostly blue around it, as well as our smaller stem over here, which you can always obviously line up to see the sizing on all of this. You know, to get a little look at it. And I guess while I'm doing that, I might just add a little bit of glue here on the top part where it's gonna overlap with that tag. So this way I can get a sense of that placement. And again, it's okay if you're a little bit off. This is just a little look at trying to recreate. I'm making a mess because that is wet glue. All right. So let's leave that there for a second so that it can dry. We have that piece, and then we also have this live your life to the fullest little tag. Again, just inking those edges a smidge. Take some regular adhesive so it'll stay in place. And I'm gonna put that right across there. So this way my piece does kind of start to hold shape a little bit. We'll take the heart. The heart's gonna go up a bit because we also have this happy days. So kind of do it like that. And where is happy days? The only problem is some of the little tiny pieces we wind up losing as we go because they are tiny. And can I find it? Can I find it? Happy days, where'd you go? Okay, well, I'm missing happy days at the moment. It is possible that I might have put it in my pile for the other layout. So I'm not gonna sweat it right now. I'm just gonna move past as if I had it or can find it, and that's fine. We can always replace it with something else later or just skip over it. So that's fine. So we do have the little laser cut button that has that little string popping out. And I'll put that on the edge of the heart over there. And then we have our look, a teeny tiny little button, and another staple. So I'm going to look to have another staple over the tag. So I'm going to now flip it all over. I'm noting over here that we're going to have other pieces, so I'm really not going to put my adhesive yet onto the bottom of this stem because we're going to be tucking under some other pieces as we go. So before I glue anything down, I'm going to kind of lay it out a little bit. Okay. And that looked like it was stapled. Kind of like this gold one a little better because it matches the gold one in this one. And then the look. Okay, so I'm going to adhere my pieces down. Now you'll note that the photos up here, they're not exactly even because of that tag. So I'm going to add a little bit of a chipboard backing behind that so that way it will be flatter moving forward. So I'm just taking one of those squares, and actually I might even take a second one just so I have a little extra. Okay. That should be enough to make it nice and even with that clip. Okay, so I'm going to position that like that. Right, awesome. So now those photos pop out and that clip lies nice and flat. I could add one of my little dots just to make sure that that clip isn't going to go anywhere, which I don't think that it would, but why not, right? Okay. And there is our photos down. So now again, I'm not going to glue the bottom of the leaves in just yet because I'm not exactly sure what I need to tuck under at this moment. So this piece is going to go like that. I glue the staple. Which got a little extra glue over, but that's all right. Okay. Peeling off that adhesive by accident, but that's okay. Put the word look. Yep. Okay. I'm just going to stick that right there, that little button. All right, coming together very nicely. All right, now that these pieces are in place, but not totally all the way glued down, I am going to be careful with how I flip this. I'm now looking for the large document chipboard piece, as well as the, nope, not that tag. The tag that has the 49615 in the corner, and then back to our remember that's going to come sticking out. So I'm noting that the tag goes on top of the remember and the document will go on top of that, kind of getting intertwined between the leaves and then overlapping on the photo. So let's see how that comes to be. Maybe I'm gonna, oh, my photo's up a little higher than my cluster, or yep, which is fine. I guess that should have been shimmied down a little bit, but that's okay. I'm gonna just adapt it. And put that off to the side. Okay. The remember is gonna go here. It does kind of look pretty even to this other side, so it does look like it ran through. I'm gonna just stress that ticket a bit. It should be a little bit more worn, right? Okay. can also dab a bit of glue. And some I like to leave up just to give it, again, that dimension. Okay, I'm gonna put a little more adhesive here. And I'm just gonna overlap that so it's a little different than the sample, and that's a-okay. All right, so that, double checking, is going to be a look at my final layouts. Hope you guys are enjoying yours. As you can see, a little change here and there certainly is not going to make a big difference. The idea behind these is to give you a starting point and to have a little look at all the layering that can be achieved with all these different pieces. So this is our third layout, and now I will move on to our fourth and final layout. And this is kind of a similar concept in that there is a lot of pieces going on over here. And as you, I can't even tell which are the laser cuts and which is on the paper. So the background paper has a lot also going on to it with all the different layers and blends and whatnot, which makes for a gorgeous paper and a gorgeous backdrop. For this one, I'm going to kind of do opposite of what we've just done, and we're going to build right on top of this one and see how that works for us so that you can also see the difference in terms of lining it up on your own or lining it up on the page itself. Okay, that fourth layout. So we have a lot of pieces still left and a lot that we can work with for this particular layout. So again, I'm going to look to do that main cluster, which is over here. This uses the laser cut frame, and the only reason is you have some chipboard frames, which are great and you can certainly use on future projects. These are just a little bit smaller, so we're going to use the laser cut piece here. We also have our ephemera envelope. And I should probably separate some of these pieces. Okay, we have the large tag, the add 2347, which there are two of those, and you can either cut one in half and use the top and the bottom, or you can obviously use them as separate pieces. I'm going to just take the one and cut it in half because I like to try to maximize where I can, but totally up to you. So if you, as well, we also have this ephemera. So the ephemera, the ticket, the envelope, I'm sorry, the frame, and all of that. So this way we have a little look at our pieces. Okay, so with the blue piece of ephemera where it should go, I'm going to tuck in our little bits. This is just a tiny little tag part that's coming out the bottom there, and then the top will come out through these two pieces. So yeah, it goes like that if we're following this, the little bit. And again, I probably should have done some inking before, but I can always do it now. I can also always kind of just try to pick up those edges and give it a little bit of that vintage vibe. All right, so now this little piece is going to get tucked right in between these two. Okay, so starting to get there with our cluster. We then have our envelope. I'm going to go right in the center since that's where our main cluster piece is. I'll pop that back in place and then use the background for our guide. Okay. All right, so now this is going to go on top towards the left. Get that just a little bit. Okay, and then we have our frame with our look here. File tab underneath. I'm gonna wait till this is down to stick that in the right spot. Okay, so I'm noting that this is kind of along the bottom corner a little bit. We'll see the 5 cents sticking up. And then the title part gets hidden. Okay. I feel like that should have popped a little. All right, so this is a look at pretty much our photo cluster that's right here. We then get into some of the greenery, and I'm kind of debating, should we go with using it on this, or is it better to go on the flip side? I'm gonna switch what I said and probably go back to, we're gonna wind up building it over here because I'm not sure if I'm gonna be happy with any of those shadows, but obviously you can go whichever way you prefer. So for now, I'm gonna try to build out this cluster a little bit before flipping it to the other side. So there are several of your greenery, and I will note on this particular 2 pieces, one is larger than the other. The larger piece gets used, if you're following the exact same sample, the larger piece gets used on the left-hand side, and this smaller piece will wind up getting used on the right-hand side. So we'll worry about this later, but I do just want to point out the 2 different sizes on that particular piece since it is the same greenery. And if you are trying to mimic this, then let's, I guess, go as best we can. So that looks to me like it goes under our cluster. So I'm going to kind of just drop it there. You could cut away some of this greenery that you know will get hidden by our cluster. For now, I'm going to leave it just so I have something to pick up on the cluster and can glue to. So I'm just using a little bit of glue there. So this way it will kind of fall into place in terms of the location that it should be on. So that's what I'm grabbing to right here. So with that greenery, I'm trying to show it on the paper. We then have another greenery, which I think is the, oh, there's actually 2 of these. I think this one was a extra, just a little extra. So this is, again, the larger of the 2 pieces is going to get used on this particular layout. And the other piece is just an extra for another project, another day. So the idea being that we are going to overlap this underneath the photo, but on top of that tag. So I'm gonna kind of get a sense of the placement. Those 2 larger pieces are what pop out. So that's a look at those 2 pieces of greenery. We then have, we should have a green heart. I was guessing it would have been in the chipboard as well. I'm not seeing it. So for now, I am going to use a laser cut from the paper. And again, these pieces can all be interchanged. So if you happen to find one, great. And if not, well, the paper one could be what it is. Oh, there it is. I knew it was somewhere. So we have a chipboard and we have a paper. Either are going to work for this layout. I guess this is already sticky because I had it off to the side. So I'm going to go with that and put the laser cut one away for later. So we're going to pop that over by the number 1. Right in place. And then we have I know this one was a laser cut. I remember seeing, oh no, it's a chipboard. I say laser cut, but it was chipboard. There's another little chipboard with a little flower on the circle that comes out. And that just kind of overlaps over our heart. Okay, so this is a little look at some of those pieces on this cluster. I'm trying to put down as much as I can here because it's going to be hard to flip this one back and forth. So that little black circle about here. We have a laser cut flower. This is one of the larger ones, or the larger one of those little clusters. There's almost like a small, medium, and large. On these, it has like that effect going on the print that I think it makes sense to kind of turn up your edges just a bit and make it look a little more realistic, even though it's a blue flower, so it may or may not be realistic, but that's fine. I'm gonna put this in the corner, kind of overlapping. Okay, so this is pretty much all I'm going to be able to get done on this cluster, as there's really not much else to attach to. So now I'm going to flip over and I'm going to add this. And it's a good thing I chose to use the other side because I got glue all over here. Okay, so with that in mind, putting down my adhesive, I'm going to see where that ticket falls. We don't really wind up seeing it. We see a little bit of the ticket up here when there's like another little cluster. So that should be to right about there, right? So I put that in place. Okay. I'm gonna flip it over carefully. We have some green leaves over here, as well as the blue chipboard, another green heart, which is where that could come from a paper laser cut. And then we have some of the blue chipboard circles. And this layout's gonna just get a little bit different because it's a little hard to keep track of quite all of the bits and pieces that are going on with it. And I just dropped my blue heart, but I found it shockingly. All right, so we're gonna just kind of pull some of these pieces. This is the medium green heart, flower, and we'll work it that way. And then I'm gonna try to do this. I'm gonna try to put some pieces along so that they're in an order of how they're gonna go or where they're gonna go, kind of putting some of these elements together. Oh, this is so you. I didn't even notice that up here, but okay, that we have that. And then we have the love you, the best moment. I know I had best moment somewhere. There we go. Love you, best moment. The green flower, a blue flower. And we'll work our way around finding more and more pieces. Okay, so again, we're gonna go with the greenery and this little cluster over here. Doesn't have to be all the exact pieces that we had in the sample. So, and if you're following the written directions, it's probably easier. You can reference those images as well as the layers. Okay, so I'm gonna put that there. Do I cover that or not? That's a big question. Oh, yep, we're gonna cover that string with our cluster of other bits and pieces over here. So I'm gonna kind of think I saw one of these big black ones with the dots. That'll be a nice balance. The blue. I'm changing it up a little, and that's fine. Oop. That got away from me. Okay. So, dab up that glue. Be great if I had a tissue. Okay, so I'm gonna let that be up there, and then we're gonna kind of work our way along here. So now I'm gonna start at this bottom cluster, working my way up. We're gonna use some of these pieces. Let's see what we've got going on. So, okay, the button was kind of out of nowhere, and the only reason these are on the laser cut is because we have the nice little string popping out, so that detail gets put to use. I'm also going to use the chipboard, Always You, not the laser cut one. And again, this is totally up to you in terms of how much dimension you want on your layout and whether or not you want to use the chipboard or the laser cuts. And again, you can always use whatever you didn't use on a future project. So I'm going to kind of position that, and I'm actually going to stick this one down so that the bottom stem tucks under the other leaf. So I'm going to kind of do something like that. And I'm not sure, yeah, this chipboard kind of went under the the bow. So use the chipboard to hold the seam or the bottom of that leaf cluster, and then I will ink up the edges a little bit here, just to give it that full effect. Okay, and I don't worry about covering the whole bow with adhesive. If you're putting this in the sleeve of an album, obviously just watch your edges when you are putting it in, so that way they don't bend backwards in a way you don't want them to. But I'm gonna leave this pretty much like that and give it a little flip carefully, obviously. All right, so we have the Good Life, a butterfly, a green chipboard. What else? The flower. This we didn't have. We have this and some more little circles and the flowers and all this stuff. So I'm just going to use these pieces as I see fit, going up that cluster. So I'm keeping in mind that this around midway, the Good Life over here. So I'm going to tuck that in here. Oop, got a little too much ink on that edge, but that's okay. We're going off, and that's fine. Of little circles, and the idea should just be balancing out some of these colors between the blues and the greens and making a little pop here and there. Okay. I'm gonna really carefully flip this. All right, so we have our love you, our flower, some more flowers, and we'll put a heart up there and maybe a green circle again. Okay, I also could have put the look here on the chipboard, I just noticed, but that's okay. And maybe we'll even use one of these green chipboards. Okay. Looking good. The idea is to make our little circle. That. Oh, we could have also done the Good Life was also in the chipboard, which is a little bit smaller. I'll save that for another project. I'm going to take this up here. And we're just going to pop in a few extra little pieces here and there. Okay. I think that I am probably going to leave that as is. Oh, I had a few pieces fall off. Where did these fall from? Oh, this was over here. And that was our little blue flower down here. Okay, and as you see, you can obviously, there's so many extra pieces, you can certainly add a little bit here and there if you wanted to. You know, you could add a little bridge in between. I'm gonna do that. Actually, let's add that over here. I'm gonna tuck that over there. And then we have some other pieces that I'm dropping all over the place. We have more butterflies. And more hearts as I'm making now a mess, but that's okay. It's part of the fun, right? Part of the experience. Okay. Okay. And there is my finished layout. So I hope that you enjoyed. This is the Tranquility page kit, and we will have plenty more. Thanks for joining.